Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. In case you haven't been around for the past couple of weeks, or maybe you're a new listener to the show, this episode today is actually part 3 of a 4-part series all about powerful aging. So back in episode 356, we talked about the mindset of powerful aging. We titled that Embracing Change. Episode 357, we talked about reworking your approach to aging powerfully, because obviously a lot of what worked probably in our 20s, 30s, and maybe even 40s doesn't work in the latter half of our life in the way that it once did. And today I'm really excited to have a conversation about biochemistry, things that we can do to honor and care for our biochemistry that helps us to age in a powerful way. And to help me do that, I've invited my amazing friend and colleague, Laini Gray, back to the show. If you're a longtime listener, you're very familiar with Laini. But Laini and I go way back, and we have a lot of conversations about this very thing, about biochemistry, about different ways we're approaching working with our clients to help them improve their own biochemistry. And the bottom line is, 2 minds pondering a meaty topic like this is way better than one. So I'm glad to have company today to have this conversation. And Laini is also a functional diagnostic practitioner, which is essentially someone who looks at a lot of blood profiles and hormone panels to help women, especially midlife women, I think makes up the large majority of her clientele. She looks at these things to help them optimize their health. So she is a brilliant brain to have on this show specifically today. So we've both been working in the health and wellness industry for several decades. I think there's a lot of experience between the two of us. And we're both women who are also in midlife. So we're rumbling with biochemical shifts that show up at this age and stage. I'm deep in the throes of perimenopause. Laini is in menopause. I'm kind of jealous. I just want to get there. And so there's going to be a lot of goodness baked into this show. Again, thank you for being here, but let's just dive into it because I want to cover as much ground as possible. And I don't want this to be like a 12-hour long episode. So without further ado, Laini, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I love this conversation. I love when we talk and we just kind of riff and get some meatiness and some great ideas out on the table, because women just need to hear from women who are living the experience, right?
Yeah. I think it's so true. And I know I've told you that I want to have more conversations like this with you, because I think that when you and I talk so often, I'm thinking, God, I wish this was recorded. But also I just feel like the way that we talk about things, it helps to normalize sometimes the difficulty of these types of things.
Yeah.
Before we rock and roll, because obviously there's always new listeners coming into the show, I would love you to just maybe tell listeners a little bit about your evolution in the health industry, because I think it's really interesting and it's really relevant to what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So we'll keep this the shortened version. But I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, so it took a long time. But I started out with a degree in recreation. So I very much love the idea of playing and having fun with life and recreating ourselves as often as we can. I got into personal training because I wanted to change my own physiology. I wanted smaller waist. I wanted smaller thighs, which I think is a story a lot of fitness professionals get into the field for. Through that, I learned a lot about nutrition and exercise, and that was great. And then pretty soon I started working with people going, but why? Why do they want to lose weight? Why do they want to do these things? So that evolved into becoming a health coach, and a holistic health coach at that. And then I was like, wow, okay, people don't want to get healthy to be healthy. They want to get healthy because they want to change their physiology, right? We really have this really weird idea of what it means to be healthy. And about that time is when you and I met. And I remember the conversations were like, okay, fat loss is a product of health. We really need to be chasing health, not these other things. And at the time I was suffering with some symptoms of things that I couldn't diet and exercise. So all these strategies that I've been using for a decade weren't working. And so that's when I like dove in and went into more functional nutrition and learned how to do lab testing and these kind of things to really study the physiology underneath, what's happening with your hormones, your digestion, your detoxification, your mitochondria, and why that's so important and why we can't just out exercise or cut our calories into a healthy state.
Yeah.
And as you and I know, we got so excited about this, and this was so fascinating. And I'm getting healthy, and I'm trying all these new things, and I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm feeling really good. I even came to your house one time, and even your husband was like, "She's working out good. She looks good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I feel strong. I feel good." And then things started to go awry again. And it wasn't because I was sick or broken. It was because perimenopause had started. I was like, what in the absolute hell? Come on.
Yeah.
And so for the last decade, then I've really shifted my focus into what does it mean to transition through this menopause state, and how does that affect us mentally, emotionally, physically, and what can we do to take care of ourselves so that we can age gracefully and have a full life through the transition and after.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love this. I love so much about what you just said. Like, first and foremost, I just want to say, like, it makes so much sense in my brain that you have a background in recreation, mainly like the fun and the play, because I think it just completely, it's just a great overlay of who you are. I mean, I think anyone who meets you would say, yep, that makes total sense. And because I think you bring that to your teaching, like you keep
Yeah.
things fun and light, and even difficult conversations like this, like the hell we're rolling through perimenopause and menopause. The other thing that I love is that I think you're so right. I think so many of us who are passionate about health and wellness, unfortunately, came in through the door of just wanting to make it about the outside of our body. We just wanted to look better. We wanted to have, a great butt and the six-pack abs and whatever. We just wanted to look the part. And as we stayed in the industry and as we age ourselves, obviously we learned the error of our ways. And we did some face plants and we got to go course correct, which was a whole lot of fun. But I also think that it's partly what makes us so passionate about what we do is that we learned the hard way that health it really has nothing to do with the outside of your body and everything to do with the inside of your body.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to follow up with is just, I hope what people are hearing in your introduction is that as a professional with so much education on so many different layers of just biochemistry and health in general, you struggle too. We all do. So we have all of this information, but it doesn't mean that we aren't going through our own rumbles. And I think that's just really important to put out there. And again, it just makes us all the more passionate about having the conversation.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and that's the piece too. And I know this is true with you, Courtney, too. When we work with people and we have these conversations, what people, especially women, what they want to hear is they're not alone and they're not crazy and they're not the only one going through this. And here's the deal. Like, you know this as a mom, right? You think, oh gosh, I'm never going to get my sleep again with this little baby. And then they turn into 6 and they're falling down and breaking things. And then they're like, skateboarding outside. I mean, it never gets easier, should I say. The challenges just change along the way. And so we have to learn to adapt and really come back to those foundations of what's important.
I wish I remember where I heard this, but I heard someone once say that life is a series of problem solving. And the sooner you accept that, the less you will suffer.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like we wait for this utopian place where we're not going to have problems anymore. It just doesn't work that way.
It doesn't happen. They just become different. They become different.
It's so true. They just become different. And certainly that is true of this midlife transition and all that we're going through. So to start this out, I would love for you to maybe share with listeners a little bit about what powerful aging means to you.
To me, powerful aging is really looking at the things I want my life to be full of. Yeah. How do I want to fill my life? And that's what I really want. I want to be powerful, but I want life to be full of the things that bring me joy, the things that I love, and I want to have the energy and the bandwidth and the mental clarity to do all of those things. I want to have more time with my family, more time with the people I love, more vacation, more time outside, and shifting the focus to those things that I actually want in my life makes it easier to transition with how my diet changes or my nutrition changes or how these different changes affect, because I want my life to be full. I don't want to have the same life I had in my 20s where I was wanting to change everything about myself.
Yeah. So it's what I hear is like, And it gives you a really compelling reason to do those things
Yeah.
because you want to step into kind of this vision that you have. And I love that you're starting with that because inside of our community, we talk a lot about creating what we call a power vision,
Yeah.
which is when you are standing fully in your power, no matter what your age or stage of life, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And a lot of women, that seems like kind of a simple question, but a lot of women have never paused to ask
Mhm.
themselves that. Right.
Yeah.
Another way of simplifying that is just what does success look like to you at this age and
Yeah.
stage of life? And how would you need to care for yourself in order to show up for those things?
Yeah. I mean, I am blown away. I mean, I'm not because it happens to all of us. We get caught in the throes of life and we're busy. But one of the questions I will ask is, what brings you joy?
Yeah.
That should be a simple question. And yet, I would say 9 out of 10 of the women I work with can't answer it.
Yeah,
And when
because
I
we're
say,
so busy with the
totally.
to-doing and the hustling and
And
the,
when I say, okay, can you get back to me by next week? They're like, oh, like that. They're really stressed. They don't even think they can find what brings them joy in a week's time. So we really need to shift. Like, what happened that we have lost our joy or our passion or our power?
yeah.
And then perimenopause hits, right? It's like this chaos. So we really have to find those things. So we have that reason, like you said, to get through to the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I shared a lot of my thoughts about powerful aging in a couple episodes ago, so I won't go too deep into it. But I do just want to share for this episode that I think it speaks a lot to resilience.
Mhm.
And I always say cell to soul because aging is a natural decline. That's what it is. We are going to lose capacity, literally from a cellular level to the outward physical level. And to do the work that needs to be done to slow that rate of decline as much as possible, to me, that's powerful aging.
Yeah.
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 And I
Which
think
we
it
need.
was, I think in Peter Attia's book, Outlive,
Yeah.
because I do want to talk a little bit about
Yep.
resources for people to have more maybe input on this powerful aging conversation. But he says experiencing a physical decline with age is not something we can control. Everyone's going to experience it. But the rate at which we decline, we absolutely have some control over. And that's
Yeah.
really what we're here to talk about today.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
So, what do you think is the biggest barrier? If you had to name like one barrier that you think is the biggest for women to age powerfully, what do you think it is?
Forgetting to look forward.
Mm,
We're not looking forward. We're looking backwards, wishing we had something in the past, wishing I could be back to what I was here, or I wish I could get this off because I was happier then, or all of these things. And so if we're always looking backward, how can we, chart a course forward? Right? If all of our energy is in the back and we're trying to repeat old patterns or go back to a time that we think we were happier, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. Like you're not going to get anywhere.
yeah. It's like focusing so much on the past. I always say this, it bars you from actually stepping into what could be
Totally.
because you're just chasing something you've been, not something
Yeah.
that you could be.
Yes. And I think part of that is that misconception that I don't know where it comes from, but we'll get married and then we'll have kids. And then somewhere like the thought process stops, right? Like
Like
when
we haven't thought past that
right.
point.
Okay. So why have we not thought that? You know what I mean? Like when we're 16, we can't wait to get out of the house. Then we want to go to
Yeah.
college. Then we have all these things to look forward to. And somewhere along the line, we've forgotten to look forward to all the things that still life has to offer. And then we get stuck in this really weird place where we're like, oh, if only I could fit in that dress, or if only I could, go back. And it's like, no, 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 no. We need to be going forward,
Yeah.
right? We need to move forward. So we need to figure out how are we going to look forward and take action accordingly.
It's interesting you say that. I have a lot of conversations around purpose
Mhm.
because I find a lot of my clients, which pretty much range between, I would say, like early 40s to maybe late 60s. That's like my typical range of the clients that I work with. And the topic of purpose comes up a lot. It's almost like
Mhm.
when the jobs are sort of winding down and the kids are leaving the house and the people and the things are taken care of, there's this reckoning for a lot of women of, I don't know, they didn't feel like they don't know what their purpose is anymore.
Mhm.
And what I'm always reminding them of is, well, you get to decide.
Yeah.
You get to decide on your purpose.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something that's going to find you. You have to just decide what you want to put your resources towards and do that.
Hmm.
Make that your purpose.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it doesn't have to be this big grand thing. I think we get caught up on this too. If we don't have this, oh, I'm going to launch this big business, or I'm going to do this, these big things, or I'm going to raise 5 children, whatever the case may be. It can be, I'm going to be really good at planting a garden.
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't have to, we lose sight of the fact that simple things matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you planted the garden, do you know how much time that takes?
Yeah.
To have a garden? Like I don't have one. That's something I would love to have more of in my life moving forward. And I know people, and the people that have the most beautiful gardens, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they
Love
do.
that.
When we go to the farmer's market, we're really happy that somebody chose to stay home and work on a garden. So it really is finding something that brings you joy, because it will trickle out. It will have, the purpose goes beyond you when you put all your passion into it, whatever it is, whether
Yeah,
it's
it
teaching
has-
piano lessons or volunteering at the school. It doesn't have to be this, I'm going to start a nonprofit, even though that would be great.
yeah, sure.
That would be great, right? But there's other ways that we can have purpose and make an impact on the world at any age of our life.
Yeah. So I love this. I'm not surprised. I think we're thinking along similar lines here in terms of like the biggest barrier. I think the biggest barrier that women have to aging powerfully is themselves.
Yes.
And I would say just underneath that is just a whole lot of beliefs that are holding them back from what would bring them joy and what would help them to find purpose and all of the things. We have a lot of beliefs around it being too late, us being too old. I've never been a person who, I mean, there's just so many limiting beliefs that get in the way of the work that we're really actually calling ourselves into. So
Yeah.
instead of doing that work, we just spend our life hiding, or we spend
Totally.
the second half of our life hiding.
Yeah. We're complaining about it. We don't like it. We wish we were something else. And yet we have everything to like make this whole second act
Yeah,
even better than the first.
definitely.
Yeah.
So let's, just because I mentioned it earlier, a few resources, like people who I follow or authors that I love that I think speak really well to this topic, especially for women who are transitioning into the second half of their life. I put Peter Attia, who wrote
Yeah.
Outlive.
Yep.
He also has the podcast Drive, in case you want to follow him there. You've read Outlive, yes?
Mhm.
Yeah, such a
Yeah.
great book. Stacey Sims. I
Mhm.
think Stacey Sims is great. I do think she speaks a little bit more to the athletic
Yeah.
woman. So I just kind of put that caveat there. So someone who is sort of in the scene of racing or competing on some level, I do think she's a great resource for that. Dr. Mary Claire Haver,
Mhm.
who she has a new book coming out called The New Menopause.
Yeah.
I think she's a great resource for women. And she's actually coming on the podcast in June,
Yay.
which is really cool. And then Lisa Mosconi, I think,
Mhm.
does a great job speaking to, especially when it comes to the brain and cognitive function. She has the
Yeah.
XX brain, and then her new book is called The Menopause Brain.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyone you would add to that list?
Oh, I'm reading The Menopause Brain right now. So I'm like, I
Oh,
love that
awesome.
one. Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Good. She's great. Those, I mean, there are so many, but I think those are great places to start
Yeah.
for the,
Yeah.
yes, just in looking and
So for someone who doesn't, like when we say the word biochemistry and they look at you like you have 10 heads, like how would you explain biochemistry to someone who doesn't know what that is?
biochemistry is all the inner workings of yourself, right? You have cells, you have organs, you have tissues, you have hormones, you have enzymes, you have all of these things that are going on inside of you. And what's really cool is they work whether you're cognizant of them or not. So that's pretty
Thank
cool,
God. Can you imagine
right?
if we had to think about all
Oh,
those processes?
no, I mean, I can barely get the dishes done, right? So this happens without us realizing it. But the reality is we have this huge chemistry experiment going on all the time.
Yeah.
All the time,
Yeah.
right? And we're mixing things and adding things and taking out things and trying to see what works. But we have to be aware of it so we know how to make changes or how to handle it so that we get the best outcome.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. So good. I basically always say the same thing, that your biochemistry, basically you are a mass of trillions of cells and you have this kind of skin suit and muscle suit that holds it all together.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have that skin and we didn't have those muscles and organs, you would be a puddle of cells.
Yes.
And those cells do a lot of jobs, right? I mean, they do the transporting, they do the detoxifying, they do the transmitting information, so many things. And so we want cells to be functioning at a really efficient rate.
Right.
We want them to be able to do their jobs easily and effectively. And that's really what we're speaking to when we say biochemistry.
Yeah.
So I know you and I, and you, anyone listening to this, you can go to the search page on Grace and Grit for the podcast and look up Lainey's name. I mean, I don't know how many times you've been on the show. A
A
lot,
couple.
a few, way more than a few. And we have had this conversation, but I'd love to summarize it here. What are some of the big ways our biochemistry shifts as we age that we should be aware of? Like, why are we rumbling at midlife with perimenopause and menopause in the ways that we do?
Yeah. So, I mean, aging is a normal process, right? So, as
Yeah.
you alluded to, we kind of just start to decline. And the sad thing is when you start looking at the research, that actually starts around like age 25. So you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that we've made it this far to our 40s or something, right? That we're actually still in one piece because we have this very slow decline. But for women especially, what happens is our reproductive system, our ovaries decide that it's time to retire. And if you think about the grand scheme of things, yes, as far as fertility and bringing babies into the world, we don't have that capability anymore, and that's okay. But when these ovaries retire and our production of progesterone and estrogen decline, it affects every system of our body. And that's the conversation that we've missed for the last how many hundreds of years in women's health is that, yes, our fertility is gone, but also the other functions of the body that estrogen and progesterone mitigate change. Right. So our our ability to eat carbohydrates kind of changes, right? Our blood sugar and insulin shift, our cholesterol shifts, our brain function shifts, right? Our mood changes, our skin changes. All of these things change as our hormones are shifting through this transition. And it can seemingly come out of nowhere. And in some cases, it really feels like that. It's like one day you're fine, and the next you're like, "Who am I?"
Yeah.
But this is what's happening, and it's different for everyone. So that gets really confusing for people as well. Is that it's not the same from person to person. Each woman will have a unique experience. There's some hallmarks that many women have: a little weight gain, some hot flashes, some brain fog. Right? Most people you'll hear them talk about that. But there's other things like cardiac arrhythmias and different, heart palpitations, extreme anxiety, not sleeping, losing muscle mass, osteoporosis. Like a lot of things can be really crazy. And it's not that you're falling apart. It's just the hormones and the interplay with all of those cells of the body. There's a major shift happening.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you're speaking to this because I think that health and wellness is always nuanced, right? It's always very dependent on the person in front of you in terms of the advice you're going to give. And I think that becomes even more true at midlife.
Yes.
But I want to call out like why that is. We live such different lives, right? The stressors of my life are very different from the stressors of your life.
Yeah.
Our genetics are different.
Yeah.
Right? Our makeup is different because of our lifestyle choices. I mean, there are just so many things that influence, I always say the stress bucket, right?
Yeah.
The stress bucket is full of different things for all of us. But what is true for all of us is the decline of those hormones at midlife is affecting our capacity to manage the stress.
Yes.
And then we get to experience all the lovely things that you just described, which again is a little bit different for all of us. I talked about this pretty extensively in the first podcast in this series, just highlighting Peter Attia's beautiful sort of explanation of the difference between health span and lifespan. All right. So health span being living as long as possible with as much health as possible, right? Where lifespan is really just speaking to the age at which you die. It doesn't say anything about the quality with which you live those years, certainly not on a physical level. So some of the things that we can control in terms of affecting our biochemistry, especially as we go through this midlife shift. And please don't hear anyone listening to this, please don't hear that we're saying if you do these things, you're not going to experience any effects of your transition. Of course you will. You still will. But you can minimize the amount of those effects with things like let's go over these. I
All
know
right.
we're just going to bounce off of each other. So
Yes.
just go
I
ahead and
mean,
start.
here's the deal. And especially if you've been following Courtney, you've heard her talk about this for how many years now?
Yeah.
You need to be strength training.
Yeah.
I mean, end of story. End of story. Women need to be lifting weights. And it needs to be heavier than the pink dumbbells. It needs to be heavier than the purse. It's going to have to shift from sometimes from some of those fun classes that are really fun and great for you for all of the good
Mhm.
reasons that your mood changes and you get to move your body and you have friends. But you really have to maximize your muscle and your lean mass because that's what's going to support you to start that garden or to carry those grandkids or to move forward and feel good about it. And I mean, it really is so important. And even Dr. Mosconi talks about it, right? Exercise and strength training, all of these things have effect on the brain. They have an effect on our bone health, right? It's a big deal on our metabolism, on everything. So strength training, I think, is key.
Yeah. And let's just kind of pause there for a second because two things I think you mentioned that are definitely worth repeating. And this is a big one because
Yeah.
you and I are both huge proponents of making things fun. Right?
Yes.
Like anything that
Yes.
you don't enjoy, you're not going to keep
Yeah.
doing for the long term. So it's
Yeah.
really important that you find ways to enjoy the things that you are doing in order to keep yourself healthy. That being said, when I have clients who are taking a ton of random classes all
Yeah.
the time, and then they're also simultaneously frustrated that they're not making progress,
Yeah.
there's a connection there,
Yeah.
right? Because progressive overload is a very relevant thing
Mhm.
in terms of building muscle mass. We need to
Yeah.
consistently challenge the muscle in ways that are progressively making it more difficult. And a lot of times when we're going to group exercise classes, that's not happening because you have a new instructor, every class, you have a new set of exercises being thrown at you. You
Yeah.
might be using weights, you might not be. It is not ideal for progressive overload.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing like a structured small group type training, that can be very different.
Mhm.
But I think, yes, working your way to lifting heavy requires progressive overload. And I don't think that many classes out there are actually offering that kind of
Right.
approach, which can be problematic to actually building muscle.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And there's no saying that these classes aren't fun and you should definitely have fun.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And I'm not trying to knock anything here. I did some Orange Theory. I was a coach at Orange Theory for a
Yeah.
while.
I remember that.
And it was super fun. And it was super fun. But one of the things I struggled with was the pace at which the strength session of the workout was completed. And so because you're at a certain pace, and if you've been in one of these classes, or if you're like in a body pump or something like that, like you're doing biceps for 3 minutes straight for the entire song, right? There's no way you can lift your heaviest weight if you have to lift it for 3 minutes without
I
stopping.
definitely could not. No.
Like,
Yeah.
and I remember I used to teach those classes and
Yeah.
I couldn't push if I wanted to stay up there and look the cutest and do all the things, I had to keep it with a more moderate weight. And so anyway, at Orange Theory, I had all these women in midlife that are getting into their orange zone or whatever zone they're supposed to be in. And they're like, okay, I've done this for 2 months and I've gained weight and I'm not
Yes.
feeling any better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because this isn't the right workout for you to change your physiology. Is
Yeah.
it great for the energy? Yes. Is it great for the fun? Yes. Are you
Or
going to
maybe
be able to?
cardiac capacity, right?
Yes.
Or
Right.
mobility or
Yes.
flexibility. Like
Or
there's a
being
lot
able
of
to
other
run. Yeah.
things.
Sign up for the 5Ks and run
Yeah.
those comfortably. Yes. There's a lot of benefits, but it's not doing what you need for your biochemistry at this age of life.
Yeah. So lifting heavy is really important. And anyone listening to this who is not exercising at all, please do not hear that you have to go sign up for a heavy weight training class tomorrow.
Yeah.
That is not at all what we're saying. You walking around the block for the next few weeks could be could get you some gains. Like that is
Yeah.
going to be a lovely place to start. You got to meet yourself where you're at. But over the long term, if you want to continue to progress with battling sarcopenia, which is basically the loss of muscle as we age, we definitely have to increase weight over time progressively to allow that to happen. And I love Gabrielle Lyon, Forever Strong. She's a physician
Yeah.
as well, who she specializes in longevity. So she
Yeah.
works with a lot of people to age powerfully. But I love when she says that we don't really have an obesity crisis in our country. We have a lack of muscle crisis.
Yeah.
And I just think that is such an awesome pivot that if you struggle with weight,
Mhm.
And again, especially at midlife, right, which is a common complaint for a lot of women traveling through
Yeah.
perimenopause and menopause, strength training again is your friend.
Yeah. Completely. And I used to joke when I was full-time personal training, and I would say, here's the deal. Do you think I don't think this is dumb to walk into a building and sit in a machine and lift something heavy? Like that's kind of a weird concept.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. It doesn't seem really normal or natural. But I'm like, the alternative is that you need to buy a ranch and start working outside every day and lift hay bales. Like that's the difference. Our society has changed. So we no longer lift heavy things on a day-to-day basis. So like my dad has never been in a gym, but
Yeah.
he lifts 100-pound hay bales
Oh my gosh, your dad
and
is just
jumps
awesome. Yeah.
and jumps off the back of the truck into
Yep.
a deep squat jump.
Yep.
I'm like at 75, right?
I love that you're bringing this up, Lainey, because I think we so easily forget that the reason strength training even exists is
Yeah,
because of the advent of comfort culture. Like we have
totally.
become a culture that is sitting so much and
Yeah.
never walking, never like we're not doing the activities that we would have been doing 100 years ago. And so literally exercise was born out of a need to combat the demise that was happening because of all of these modern day comforts.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
think about you, Courtney, and your dancing. Like, think about it. Before we had all of the things that we do for fun now,
Yeah.
I mean, even 56 years ago, everybody went dancing. You all went dancing and you did line dancing, you did couple, like swing dancing. And there was like this, that's what you did as a community is go out to these. We don't do that anymore.
No, now we sit in front of screens
Yes.
watching other people have fun and dancing.
Yes. Yes. It's
Crazy.
crazy, right? And then we're like, oh, we should do that. And then we don't, right?
No, and then we don't. It's so true. So one other thing I want to mention about strength training, because I think it's just important for people to have sort of a lot of fuel for the fire around this, is that osteoporosis is also a very real threat as we age and hormones shift and we are less mobile. And strength training actually helps us to keep our bones strong because muscle pulls on bone. And when you're creating a torque on a bone, that bone has to fortify itself. And so I just think that's a really helpful reminder for people when they are especially resistant to learning a new skill like strength training. Because let's be honest, ladies, that's why a lot of you aren't doing it. You just have resistance because you just have never done it or you haven't done it long enough to feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so having, I think, all of these reasons for doing it can be really compelling.
Yeah, and I would just say to that, if we are able to find our purpose and what we want to be more full in our life with,
Yeah.
and we think about strength training, this is one of those perfect opportunities to invest in yourself. Hire a trainer.
Yeah.
Hire a trainer. Can I just tell you, like, it's fun to actually go to the gym and have somebody tell you what to do. You don't have to do the deciding. Somebody else can decide for you. You get this feedback, you get and the strength gains and especially if you're starting out new, the gains that you will have within a month's time will be incredible. And pretty soon you're like, oh, consistency, one of Courtney's favorite things to talk
Yes,
about.
one of my favorite topics.
Consistency really works, right?
Yeah.
So if you're afraid to start, ask someone to help you, hire someone to help you. It's
Definitely.
okay. Give yourself permission to take care of yourself. Your children, your sibling, whoever, you always take the dance lesson. Let's put you in basketball camp. Do the same thing for yourself.
Yeah. And there's so many benefits to that, right? You have that outside accountability, you're paying for it. So there's a financial investment.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're removing decision making because you're literally hiring someone to do that for you. I mean, there's just so many benefits, especially when you're just getting started to have someone help you get that kind of traction. So love that. Let's talk about nutrition for a minute because, and again, any one of these topics we could literally talk about for a year. Like just strength training, we could have a whole podcast about it. We could have a whole podcast about nutrition. So we're just touching on these things today. But when it comes to powerful aging, one of the things that I see and I sort of help clients work through a lot around nutrition is number one, under eating. I've never had a woman honestly come to me who was over consuming nutrients, like things that actually nourish the human body.
Yeah.
Are they over consuming some processed food? Probably, right? But largely, I see a lot of women under consuming calories and then wondering why they can't build muscle. They have no energy. They're not sleeping well at night. They're always moody. Like there's a connection. So the underconsumption of calories in general, but also massively an underconsumption of protein. which
Yeah.
I feel like anyone who's on any kind of social media channel these days, probably that's all
Yeah.
they see. I see protein everywhere now, which is great. It still doesn't make it easy to consume because protein is something we have to prepare in advance. It's not
Yeah.
something we can just grab off a shelf necessarily, not as easily as a carbohydrate or maybe a fat source.
Yes. Because that's back to the comfort culture,
Yeah.
right? Being comfortable with things. But it's true, we need that. And then to echo Dr. Lyon, Gabriella Lyon, she's like, we have to have the protein to stimulate our muscle. And muscle is the organ of longevity. If we want to have that full life and have longevity where we actually enjoy our life as we age, we need to have muscle, and protein is the building block of muscle. Right? So we have to be doing that. So one of the things it's really unfair. It's really unfair. We get to midlife and we have worked our tail off to get there and we just want to like celebrate and just do whatever we want.
We just want
Sorry,
everything to work.
it doesn't work that way. Like,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a big struggle too. Is you're like, okay, I don't want to change. I've worked this hard to get here. I want to be able to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can do whatever you want. That's your choice. But your physiology needs certain things to optimize your health and to feel and function your best. And protein's a big one.
Yeah, we don't have that youth on our side anymore where we have reserves in the tank and we can get away with a little bit of, right, infliction, like a little insulting to the interior of our body. Our body is not as, I would say, not forgiving in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it's definitely less forgiving than it was when we were
Yeah.
in our 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention, because I know I don't want to dismiss the very real struggle that a lot of women are facing with their bodies shifting.
Mhm.
And like you said earlier, maybe they're a little more sensitive to carbohydrate. Maybe their body is no longer tolerating certain foods because we
Right.
do develop a lot of sensitivities and even allergies at midlife. And weight gain is a reality for a lot of people. And one of the hills I will die on is that dieting is not a lifestyle. Like, dieting is intended to be a tool that you use at the right time for the right purpose.
Mhm.
But if you live in a state of calorie deficit, you are not doing yourself any favors because the body can't thrive and grow and do all the things that you're asking of it. So if you're a woman who does have weight to lose, but you also are a woman who is constantly under eating and you feel like hell, you may need to work your calories up a little bit in order to get to a place where your body can handle a deficit.
Yeah.
Because, and I say this emphatically because the number of women I've worked with over the years who come in and are already only consuming, let's just say 1,300, 1,400
Right.
calories a day.
Right. Mhm.
Well, yes, we can all argue that weight loss is a byproduct of a calorie deficit.
Mhm.
Where am I supposed to take a woman into a calorie deficit if she's already at 1,400 calories?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you take her to 1,000? Do you take her below 1,000? Who wants to live there? Nobody.
Nobody.
So I think that the shift for powerful aging around nutrition in part needs to be around eating for fuel versus eating for constantly losing weight.
Yeah. Completely, right? And that's if we're already in this kind of state of decline and we're trying to maximize how much life we have left,
Yeah.
we want to fuel that. So we do have to have that shift. And I will say this just based on personal experience. Okay, I did not have a great perimenopause. It was very chaotic. I gained weight. It was a struggle. It really sucked. Like, I'm just going to be honest. And I like to share that because it sucked. And here was me, a fitness professional who knew how to diet, knew how to do the things. And so I was even at the time when all this hit, I was like full on Whole30, lifting heavy, doing the things, feeling great. It did not matter. And so there were definitely times when mentally I was like, okay, I've got to cut calories. I've got to do different things.
Yep.
None of that ever worked.
Yeah.
None of that ever worked. It was a long process of having to really dig deep and go, what's most important? What are the foundations I need to focus on so that I could come out this on the other side? Now, on the other side, being in menopause, guess what? Things start to even out again.
Yeah.
Things start to even out. So it's like, hang in there, sis. But we have to fuel the body so that when you get to the other side, you're not completely depleted, stressed out, exhausted, and just don't even know where to go. Right?
Yeah, and it's so great that you're mentioning this because
Mhm.
it's such a downward spiral when you're consistently under consuming calories at a time when your body already isn't tolerating stress so great. Guess
Yes.
what happens? You lose
Yeah.
muscle mass, you lose bone mass, you get super reactive, you don't sleep, like all the things that we mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. It's like you're exacerbating a problem because we're buying into that dogma that I'm always supposed to be eating less food.
Yeah.
And I would just pose the question to anybody listening who's in that space, is it working? Is it working? Because if it's working, more power to you.
Yeah.
But for a lot of you listening to this show, I know it's not working because I work with you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
and
work
then,
with so many women that
yeah.
are doing that very thing, and it's just breaking them down. It's not building them up.
And then they end up overeating, right? Then you
Right.
go out and have that, okay, well, it's not working, so I'm going to eat everything under the sun,
Yep.
right? And now that just shifts it the other way. And when we talk about hot flashes, not all the things that you talked about are made worse when we have blood sugar instability.
Yeah.
It's just everything's worse.
Everything's
Everything's
worse.
worse. And the
So
resilience
let's lean into
factor as
that just
well.
a little bit because I think this beautifully fits. Like, yes, with the conversation of nutrition, also with the conversation of stress, because
Mhm.
blood sugar isn't just affected by what we eat, it's affected by every stress in our life,
Yeah.
right? Because think
Yeah.
about it, stress tells the brain to be on alert and get ready to fight or flee. In
Mhm.
order to be on alert, you got to have sugar in your blood. So if you're eating a diet of processed foods and tons of carbohydrate and you're living a high stress lifestyle, not an awesome recipe
Mm-mm.
for blood sugar regulation. So talk to
No.
us a little bit about blood sugar regulation and why it matters, because what does it do to the body?
Right. So if we have too much blood sugar running around, right? That's we have this really cool hormone called insulin that gets the
Yep.
blood sugar out of the bloodstream, and it's really good at storing that as fat. It's really awesome. You get to store it for later. The
So good at
problem,
that.
it's just such a real, I mean, I'm pretty good at it actually. But here's the deal. Nobody wants to store extra fat if you don't have to, right? We have food coming tomorrow. So we really don't need to have this storage up of all this fat. But we also don't need all this blood sugar all the time. So the one thing is, are we eating all these things that are raising our blood sugar, or are we having stress that's raising our blood sugar?
Right.
So we could be sitting here and have a major life stressor and the blood sugar pumps up. And then it's like, where do we go? Where do we go? Is she moving? Oh, she's not moving. She's just sitting still. So even by just being stressed out, not eating, you can gain weight because insulin comes in, grabs the blood sugar and says, let's store it away for later. And you hear this on every commercial. High cortisol goes into belly fat, right? Right. And then to make matters worse, as our estrogen declines, we become less sensitive to insulin anyway. So we really have this, we have to be as smart as our biochemistry and learn how to work with it. And the
100%.
one reminder is we've all heard these things through our 20s and 30s, and we should manage our blood sugar. When we get into our 40s and things are shifting, it's like, okay, it's make or break time. We
Yeah.
really need to do this.
Yeah.
We really need to do this. This is going to set up the rest of our life and our health. We need to get this figured out.
So quality and quantity of the food matters.
Yep.
And this conversation that I'm definitely not an expert in nervous system regulation. And this is why I always have Irene Lyon on the show and all the things. But I will say that the more that I learn about the nervous system and how much it influences things like blood sugar regulation, this is just not a conversation we can ignore. And think about it. I know for myself entering midlife, like my energy is always ramping up during the day. It's like more to do, more to think about, more problems to solve, more all the things. I was never taking time to decompress, like to dip into those places of rest and digest throughout the day. So what did I do at the end of the day? I would want to eat all my problems. And I also crashed because my system like just forced me to shut down. Or ever notice, I don't know if you ever noticed this in your life, but I often was going so hard, so fast all the time that anytime I took a vacation or a break from work, I'd get sick.
Yeah,
Because it's like I was giving my body permission to really rest and it was going to take full advantage of
totally.
forcing me down. And so
Mhm.
if we can learn at midlife how to better regulate our nervous system, we can forego a lot of unnecessary suffering.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, a couple of years ago, I wore my first continuous glucose monitor.
Yes, I remember
right? To
that.
kind of
Yes.
look at blood sugar. And if you think your stress is not there, you need to wear a continuous glucose monitor
Yeah.
because you'll notice spikes in your glucose that have nothing to do with your meal.
Mhm.
And not to throw my husband under the bus, but any time I fought with him, my glucose went way high,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or there were days when it was just high all the way across. And those were the days I was sitting at the computer working.
Mhm.
I just had things to do. So it's a really big conversation. And that's the other piece about having a more full life means giving yourself permission to do less.
Yes.
We
I
really
mean,
have
if
to
you
do
want to
less.
push, I always say you got to respect the pull. And
Yeah.
we are not pulling back enough. We are not giving ourselves the grace of the rest and digest state in general, which becomes a massive problem. And to your point, Lainey, too, I think that our culture does such an amazing job of glorifying stress, that it's
Yes.
it's always about going harder. Women can be all things to all people at all
Yeah.
times. Like you can have it all, but can you? Can you without really taking a hit on the biochemical level? I would say
Yeah.
probably not. Um, and I think a lot of people, not I think, I think I know from working with a
Mhm.
lot of people over the years that we do an awesome job of normalizing stress.
Yeah.
So women don't give themselves permission to rest and they operate at this really high level, like this high functioning level for a long time, to the point that when you ask them the question on a scale from 1 to 10, how stressed do you feel? They're like, I'm not stressed.
Yeah.
But everything else is saying that they are. They're gaining weight for no reason. They can't sleep at night, right? They're breaking out. They're having hot flash. Like you are stressed.
Yeah.
But until you taste the other side, you
Hmm.
might not realize how stressed you actually are. So this is where I say body awareness really matters. Like our bodies are talking to us constantly. And if you are overriding and ignoring all of those messages, you're setting yourself up for some really
Yeah.
rocky roads ahead.
Yeah. It's the biggest concept, or it's the most important concept, and people they're just not ready to hear it.
Yeah.
Right. I will work with people, they will do all the testing, they will do all the supplements, they'll change their diet. But when I say you have to say no to something, they fight against it.
Yeah.
And here's what I will say, what changes in midlife is that the thing you have to say no to is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
That's the difference. When you're 20 and 30, saying no means don't going out at night, don't go out, don't drink, you know what I mean? All these things that were probably not that good for you. When you're in midlife, saying no might be you're not going to volunteer at school this week. You're not going to, do something with the church group. You're not going to go to every single wedding shower or whatever the case may be. They're good things. So it's hard to say, oh, but it's a good thing, I should do it.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. And we have to understand that you're going to have to say no to things that are good.
Well, and it's bigger than that. You're going to have to be okay with other people's discomfort.
Yeah.
And this is the part that we really rumble with because
Yeah.
you setting a boundary, you saying no, you deciding to show up in your life differently is
Mhm.
150% going to make people around you uncomfortable because guess what the human brain loves? Certainty. It likes everything to stay the same all the time. And when something disrupts the apple cart, it kind of makes our brain freak out, even if it's to the advantage, like it's for the health of the other
Yeah.
person. And so I always just remind my clients that we aren't really willing to change unless we're willing to be okay with other people getting uncomfortable
Yeah.
because it's just the cost. And so you are going to have to reteach some people in your orbit
Mhm.
how you are going to be in your life and how you are going to show up and what to expect and what not to expect.
Yeah.
And that feels like a roach is why I always call it the rumble, right? It's we really rumble in that space because of all the thoughts and all the stories and all the assumptions that we're making. But with the right tools, you can work through it with more grace. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a really horrific process. It can be a really beautiful process.
Completely. The one example I think of when let's just look at the dentist, for example, right? When you need to make a dental appointment, how many days are they open?
Right.
We just about 3. Like they work 3 days a week. Like it's the best job in the world, apparently, right? And you don't say, well, will you come in on a Saturday?
Yeah.
Could you take my call tonight? You respect the fact that this is their profession, this is their practice, and these are their boundaries. Guess what? You are a professional, awesome woman. You are a professional at that, and you deserve to have boundaries too. And when you set the boundaries, people will respect them. Your hairdresser doesn't come in extra for you. You have to plan it 6 weeks in advance, right? Like all of these things. And we respect those boundaries, but why aren't we setting them for ourselves? So once we give ourselves that purpose and that I deserve this, that permission that you always talk about, Courtney, but finding the purpose, this is why I deserve boundaries.
Yeah.
Because then when you come to me inside of those boundaries, you're going to get a really good version of me that's going to be awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do a little shameless plug here because it's so relevant. But next month inside of Rumble and Rise, our entire topic is on boundaries.
Yay.
We're talking about grace-filled boundary setting. And that isn't just for other people, although we do cover that, how to set boundaries with people around you, but how to set boundaries with yourself. Because anyone who wants to age powerfully, that believes that they do not have to have any kind of constraint in a world that is constantly delivering you all of this comfort opportunity and all of this false pleasure opportunity, you're lying to yourself. We all have to practice constraint. And it's not, some people think of it as like a cruel thing, it's not cruel. It's an act of self-love.
Yeah.
If you care about yourself and you care about your well-being, you must set limits, not just with other people, but with yourself. So let's talk about alcohol on that note, because I think it just perfectly segues into it.
Yeah.
That alcohol has become a way of anesthetizing our life, or it's like the only way people think that they're fun.
Yeah.
Right? The number of women who tell me that I can't not drink because I don't really like who I am when I don't drink and I don't know how to be around other people. I'm like, well, maybe we should address that instead of just consuming this thing that is clearly not doing you a ton of favors. And look, I'll be straight up. I know you don't drink, but I do drink. I love whiskey of all things. Geez, I wish it was like, I don't know, Miller Lite or something, but I love good whiskey. My husband loves good whiskey. I used to like wine, but these things really hurt my body. I feel inflammation so fast, it's not even funny. Like I take a sip of red wine and I just immediately feel it in my fingers. I definitely feel it everywhere the next day. But I decided, I don't know, and it wasn't really even like, I'm going to stop drinking on this date, but I haven't had a drink probably in 2 months. And I wasn't even a heavy drinker. But all this to say, I cannot believe how much better I feel. And honestly, it's kind of like before I had kids, like a lot of women who have children will be able to relate to this, that once you have a child, you think, what the hell did I do with all my time before I had a kid? And I kind of feel this way around alcohol. Now that I haven't been drinking for 2 months, I think as tired as I feel at the end of a day, how the hell did I have alcohol in my life? Right? I still have aches and pains. I still have things I'm rumbling with physically. But how did I do all of that with alcohol? Anyway, so will you speak to alcohol and why it's not really a midlife woman's best friend?
Well, I mean, let's just go right out the gate. It is a neurotoxin. End all be all. There's no like health benefit to alcohol. It is a toxin in your body. It damages your brain every time you consume it. Right? Not to mention the physiological effects and affecting your liver and different things like this. It affects your estrogen detox. For women, it increases risk of breast cancer. End of story. Alcohol increases your risk of breast cancer. We need to say that more, especially during breast cancer awareness, right? So there are a lot of negative consequences to drinking alcohol, but it's the most widely accepted drug. Right? There's no regulations on it. You can drink as much as you want. It's promoted everywhere. There's a lot of money in it. And so it's really hard to kind of choose to go against that. But in midlife, I have yet to find any woman that can drink, even just on occasion, and feel her best. Right. It messes with the blood sugar. It makes hot flashes worse. Estrogen stuff is worse. There's just it's just not fun. You don't wake up feeling good the next day. Your mood is more unstable. And it's a hard one for people because it's been this, I don't know, just a comfort, if you will, or this, once again, it's that midlife, well, I just want to have a glass of wine at the end of the night. Okay. That's a choice. Right? We could be, I don't know, apparently I'm into garden season right now, but we could be going out to work in the garden at sunset. You know what I mean?
You've
But we're
hit that
not.
age where everything's about gardening now. No,
You know, it's spring, it's sunny
I
outside,
think
things are
we bird
growing.
watching next. I know it.
Yes, I know. Right? But we've chosen to do this more comfortable thing, and it's not really doing us any benefit or service. But once again, there's no judgment. Everybody gets to
Yeah,
choose how
true.
they want to move through this. What are the things they want to keep in their life? What are the things they don't?
Yeah,
But I would say this is a time to recreate yourself
yeah,
and make some choices. Try some new things out. Try strength training. Try eating more protein. Maybe give up alcohol for a couple of months and see how that feels, right? Try out a few new things, new habits, see how that feels, and then decide.
yeah. So good. Okay, I want, and this is so connected to alcohol, and we probably should have started our whole conversation here because I know you and I both believe that this is probably the most important thing, which is sleep. And
Yeah.
alcohol massively disrupts our sleep cycles.
Yeah.
I don't know a woman who drinks alcohol after the age of 40 and feels like she sleeps like a baby. I'm not saying they don't exist, but they
Yeah.
tend not to hire me. Um, so sleep and our biochemistry is it's like it's just the linchpin because it's where I always say it's where all the magic happens. It's
Yeah.
where all of the repair work and all of the fortifying happens is when we're sleeping.
Hmm.
And so when we are building or establishing lives that disregard our need for sleep, especially at midlife, we pay a pretty steep price for that.
Yeah.
Things
Yes.
can't fortify and repair. And then we wonder why aging is accelerating.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing people will say, but I drink so that I can wind down.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
so that may be in the first part of sleep, but then most of those people are waking up multiple times during the night because once again, it affects your blood sugar. And then you have a low blood sugar effect. And then you have liver stuff happening in the middle of the night. And it doesn't serve a great purpose at this stage.
Yeah.
Once you have your foundations reestablished, right, then you can build on and trickle in the things that you want to do for enjoyment or that bring you some joy, but not at the expense of the foundation. If that foundation isn't set, the rest of you, you're going to crumble, right? Sooner or later, you will crumble. And most of us hang on for a long time. We'll deal with the weight, we'll deal with this, and the crumbling comes later. But eventually it comes, right? The body keeps the score. And so we have to be tuned into that
Mhm.
because we still have this brain that's making these choices. And we also have a brain that can do better if we want it to.
And the other thing I remind people of too is like sleep is the one thing that isn't asking anything of you. It's
Yeah.
just asking you to stop doing.
Yeah.
Like, go to bed.
That's
I mean,
my
that's
favorite
it.
thing.
It doesn't cost you anything. It is like, and yet
Mhm.
the way we resist it, and I don't think it's even resisting it. I think it's the stories we tell ourselves
Yeah.
about what needs to get done. And I haven't had any alone time. So I'm going to stay
Yep.
up later and just scroll on my phone, whatever it is. And then all the lifestyle choices we're making that actually disrupt our chemistry. It's all of that combined. And the amount of magic I have seen happen in women's lives who just start improving their sleep hygiene is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Like,
And I will tell you too, because I wear a Whoop
yeah,
band that tracks my sleep and things. And it actually gauges, how much effort did I put in the day and how much recovery do I need?
yeah,
Typically, I need more than 8 to fully recover from my days. And that's on a day when I don't exercise. That's just the mental, emotional stress of working and living life.
yeah.
So when you're going through it, if you're hanging on between, that 5 to 6 hours or maybe 7, you're still going to be chronically a little bit depleted in that sleep category. And that will add up over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important to highlight here that everything that we've talked about today, like because we really talked about the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about nutrition, we talked about strength training. We didn't even get to the cardio piece, which I think
Yeah.
we'll have to save for another conversation. We talked about alcohol. We talked about rest and recovery, and changing your ways around any or all of these things is going to cost you. It's
Mhm.
going to cost you time. It's going to cost you energy. And here's the part we really hate, you're going to have to make sacrifices.
Mhm.
Like going to bed at 9 o'clock means you are sacrificing something, right? Eating more protein means you're not eating something else.
Mhm.
And I think that it's just always so important to point out that every choice you make has a sacrifice. Me having alcohol tonight, I'm going to have a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Me going to bed at 8 o'clock, I'm going to have a sacrifice. But the trade-offs are radically different,
Yeah.
right? The trade-off for the alcohol tomorrow is I'm not going to want to go work out in the morning. I'm going to be reactive. I'm going to feel inflamed and I'll be pissed at myself, right? I'm going to be in that integrity
Yeah.
pain. But
Yeah.
if I put myself to bed at 9 o'clock tonight, even though I'm sacrificing another Netflix show or maybe even a conversation with my husband, because that
Mhm.
sometimes happens,
Yeah.
the trade-off is I'm going to wake up and feel good, which is going to make everyone around me happier because I really am so much more pleasant to be around when I have had a good night's sleep. So I think it's just reminding ourselves to think in that way. Like you're never avoiding a sacrifice ever.
No.
Not deluding yourself into thinking you are. There's always a sacrifice. It's just which one do you want? Do you want the one that actually makes you feel worse? Or do you want the one that's actually going to help you to feel better?
Yes. Well said. Well said.
So I feel like there probably needs to be a part two to this because there's a whole realm of topics that we didn't really get to with
Yeah.
biochemistry, which is time outside and nature and
Yes.
so many other things, connection to other humans.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of this show and also to respect the listeners' time, we're at an hour. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. And don't worry, you will be seeing and hearing much more from Laini. But I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful to anyone listening in terms of just getting back to basics and having a little bit more, like I said earlier, fuel for the fire on why these things are so important, especially as our hormones are shifting and our biochemistry is changing. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap up this powerful aging conversation around
I
chemistry?
kind of would just echo what you're saying is that, we grew up knowing these foundations. We knew they were important.
Yeah.
And then life got in the way and we were handling things well. And we get to this place where things start to feel a lot chaotic and we start to chase after the magic pill and the magic program and all these things to meet our chaos. But the reality is it's going back to the foundations
Yeah.
and really doing them well is going to serve us, now and throughout our life so that we have this graceful aging that we can enjoy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you and I talk about this a lot, but it's like the things that we're talking about on this show, not only are they so powerful, and these are the things that research tells us time and time again seem to work, right? But they also tend to be a low investment. I mean, yes, time and energy wise, they are an investment, absolutely. But financially, these things don't have to be a huge investment. I would say the food piece, nutrition tends to be obviously an investment that none of us can avoid. And the prices of groceries, oh my gosh, we could do a whole podcast about that. So I'm not saying that nutritious food does not cost you. I know it does. But strength training does not need to be in a gym. It can be in the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to have weight equipment per se. There's lots of things that you could use to lift heavy. Sleep costs you nothing in terms of financially. Hydration, which we didn't even get to, but not drinking alcohol, that's going to save you some serious cash, right? So yeah, I think it's just important to remember that because we are living in this world of just constantly being sold so many things. And the reality is most of what you need, you already have.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But once again, quit looking outside of ourselves, come back and get in touch with who we are. We have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
We have to find that joy, find that purpose, and realize we can do it. We can do it. We just have to remember.
Yeah. And on that note, the final piece of this series, which I will do in 2 weeks, is all about reinvention and self-expression in the second half of our life, because that shifts a lot. And I think that there's an itch to shift, but a lot of women are so afraid of pursuing that calling and what they're feeling in their bones. So I just feel like that's a really important conversation to wrap up this whole series. So yeah. Thanks for being here, my friend. I so appreciate you.
Great conversation. I love it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into the Grace and Grit podcast today. If you like what you heard on the show, I want to let you know about a free masterclass that I'm offering later this month called Women's Health Reimagined. Never before have women had access to so much information about health and well-being or spent so much money trying to move their health and happiness to higher ground. I mean, quite literally, the global wellness market in 2023 was estimated to be $5.6 trillion. And women are more diseased than ever. physically, mentally, and emotionally. So clearly the pathways that we're being sold to improve our health and well-being aren't working so well. So it's time for a better path. And this class is going to introduce you to one such path, a path that puts you in the driver's seat, a path that evolves as you do, a path that helps you to step fully into your power cell to soul. All you have to do to get yourself registered is head on over to graceandgrit.com/reimagine. Again, that's graceandgrit.com/reimagine. This class is totally free, and we're offering it on 3 different dates at 3 different times. So I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story. And it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort. And with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.